This is CXO Secrets, the podcast that takes you inside the mind of business leaders and reveals the strategies behind their success. Coming up in today's show.
As CISOs and security leaders, you're always told a problem shared is a problem halved and everything else. But sometimes a lot of the work that CISO are doing is confidential, and that's the reason why you're feeling like that. And you can't discuss with people because it is confidential. You can't talk about the confidential stuff that's keeping you up at night in some cases. So trying to get that support externally is difficult sometimes, and absolutely, you're almost put under pressure to, as a leader, everybody's looking up to you, so you can't show signs of weakness almost.
CXO Secrets is powered by EDS, going beyond connections. Find out about upcoming C-level events, experiences and insights at edsxevents.com. Martin Covill, CISO at iPSL, thank you for joining us here on CXO Secrets.
No problems. Thanks very much, David, for welcoming me.
First things first, tell me about your employee at the moment, iPSL, and a bit about your role there, Martin.
Sure, yeah. So I'm the Chief Information Security Officer at iPSL. So iPSL, or Intelligent Processing Solutions Limited, is a joint venture between Unisys, the global sort of IT service provider, Lloyds Banking Group, HSBC and Barclays. And we predominantly perform business processing activities for those major high street banks, and the main area of business we work for on behalf of those banks is around the check clearing activities. We process around about 190 million checks a year to a value of around £250 billion. So we're the largest check processors within the UK at the moment. And my responsibility is for everything to do with security matters around that business processing. So look after all of the information security governance, the cybersecurity aspects, as well as access management activities. So 3 teams reporting to myself.
Wow. And we think about the future, or at least the present and the future of money, and we think, yeah, checks, they're dying out. But some of the numbers there, goodness me, that's a lot of check processing that absolutely still takes place there. And also a lot of stakeholders as well. I mean, just talk to me very briefly before we go into the main subject for today, what it's like with so many high-profile stakeholders being part of the operation that you are at iPSL.
Yeah, obviously having 3 major high street banks as your parent company owners, but also your clients, makes for quite an interesting sort of working model. Most organizations just have sort of one board that they have to report to, and you're responsible for creating your own policies, whereas we've effectively got 3 banks who have all got their own way of doing things. We have to adhere to all the banks' different policies, so we effectively have 3 sets of policies to adhere to, as well as making sure that Unisys, our parent company, we adhere to their policies as well. So it makes I suppose from an organizational perspective, it's quite a lot of bureaucracy, because you've got, you have to get all 4 businesses lined up and agree on the same thing if you want to progress with a piece of work. So it comes with its own challenges, but again, comes with lots of unique opportunities. Obviously, getting to work with some of the biggest names in the industry, all as part of one role. So definitely, it's definitely a double-edged sword.
And what's the big thing for you there at the moment? Are you mid-transformation at the moment, or is there a big reorg, or what? There's always something going on, is my general hunch.
Yeah, so we've recently completed a 3-year project where we're moving everything from a traditional sort of 2 data center approach into public cloud, so that with an industry that's declining, trying to move to something which will offer us the best value for money for our clients and customers as well. So that's been a big journey, moving from on-premise to public cloud. That's now nice and stable, and obviously now we don't need so much space for all those data centers and equipment. We're in a progress of moving to a lot smaller premises. The vast majority of our teams, IT support teams, security teams, work from home and work remotely. So post-COVID, there's no real need for massive big office buildings anymore. So we're currently undergoing a move to a smaller site. So that's a priority for sort of the next 6 months. And from a security perspective, things never stay still within the security world. So constantly, adapting to the changing threat landscape is, proactively managing that is sort of key to what we do. And then obviously with all changing regulations coming in as well, the EU AI Act, the Prime Minister from a UK perspective, has come up with the framework for the top 25 things for us to do from an AI perspective in this country to try and get us or at least catch up with the rest of the world, let alone overtake them. So making sure we're adapting to the ever-changing regulatory and legal landscape as well is not without its challenges.
Well, congratulations on that big part of the transformation program. But like you say, there is never a dull moment as a CISO, and maybe that's something that we'll tap into in the main part of our conversation today, where I want to talk about something that, well, really no matter which sector you work in or even which part of the world you work in, it's something that also featured in a CXO event that, Martin, you and I were both involved in last year. And it's an area I know you've done some research and some comms in recently. And that topic is executive burnout and well-being. Now, in my view, this is a topic that's really easy to dismiss, to think of as a sort of soft issue that's less immediate, less kind of tangible business challenge, and that, people should just toughen up and power on through. But the fact is that the better we feel, the better we perform, and the better able we are to do our job and function both inside and outside of work. Now, Martin, to prevent this from becoming too general a discussion, though, let's put this right onto our CXO audience here. What kind of data have you seen? Like I say, I know you've done a lot of work in this area. What sort of data have you seen that shows us that this is a problem, not only for IT execs, but in particular for those who work in the information security and the cyber security space?
Yeah, so thanks for that. Yeah, so generalising, Mind, the charity for mental well-being and mental health. I think they stated that mental health accounts for around about 74 to 96 billion pounds a year, an impact on the economy. So it's not something lightly. It is sort of across industry, as you mentioned, an issue that needs to be addressed. I think from a security perspective, if you're just focusing on that aspect, Forbes created a report saying that, from a role perspective, security leaders, they've got vast digital ecosystems. It's not just a small isolated network they're now responsible for the security of. As I mentioned, we've done a digital transformation project, so it's a vast digital ecosystem that you're now responsible for managing. So it's not just locked away safely in your own data center within your own walls. It could be anywhere. The use of software as a service, cloud systems as well. That means your borders that you're responsible for, not only outside of your working area, local industry. It could be anywhere across the world, right? Everything's online now, so there's so much more attack surface that you're having to, or you're accountable for maintaining and securing. And again, they're constantly having to deal with, the rising ransomware attacks, data breaches, and then you've got malicious insiders and insider threats to cope with. So again, I think the environment itself is leading to a lot more of that pressure on sort of CISOs in particular, or security leaders to do their job, and as well, as I mentioned in the brief statement about iPSL, a lot more workforces now are working remotely as well. So it's not just, your office that you've got to worry about. It's everybody at home using their home networks, how they secure, so the boundaries of what you're responsible for and having to look out for, again, is increasing that pressure on security executives to perform. Black Fog, they did some research, about the pressure on security leaders. And in the report, it said that nearly 98% of people who responded to their questionnaire said they were working well beyond their contracted hours. And I think the average CISOs clocking an additional 9 hours a week. And in some extreme cases, around about 15% of their respondents said they're working more than 16 hours above their contracted time. So you think that in a day, so CISOs on average are working at least over 1 day extra a week, or, in most, in some cases, a full 2 days additional. So it's so they're working 7 days a week in 5 days worth of time. When do they get a chance to have a downtime, right? So constantly under pressure, and, most attacks, the bad guys know when, or holidays and things like that. Statistics show that. That's most likely because they know that the security teams and IT teams will be on reduced numbers over those holiday periods. So again, they choose that time to, the paramount time for the attack. So even when you're supposed to be having some downtime to recharge your batteries, that's when, we see an increase in the number of attacks. So there's no break, unfortunately, for the CISOs, it seems.
Yeah, the recent guest on this show, John McClure, who's CISO and SVP for Enterprise Infrastructure and Cloud at Sinclair, big US media company, like 200 TV stations across North America. He said that working in what can be a stressful security field as a cybersecurity leader, you are always under some level of attack. And I guess there is just something about the basic dynamic of the role. You are always on, like you say, always under attack from who knows who or who knows what or who knows when. It's kind of part of the role, and that's difficult to escape from to some extent. So what do you see as some of the key symptoms then of the stress, of the burnout? Because sometimes we don't even see these things ourselves, do we? They're so gradual. You know, maybe if it's the time thing, I'll just an extra half an hour, an extra hour or so. Before you know it, you're spending all your Sunday afternoon, all of your Sunday reading. That's just one thing. But sometimes it's not until someone else points these things out that we can begin to see them. So what do we see? How can we recognize that this is happening?
Yeah, so World Health Organization obviously recognize burnout, which is good. You know, they class it as an occupational phenomenon and classify it as a syndrome. So at least it has some recognition, you know, but again, stress is defined as more short term. So, you know, may have a slight impact on sleep, energy or emotions, whereas burnout is, you know, totally feeling detached, demotivated. It impacts you on all aspects, you know, just to function. You know, you get that hopeless feeling and, you know, and start to feel that, you know, am I ever going to get out of this sort of situation? So it's almost a constant whirlpool of dragging you back down again. But there's sort of three main types of symptoms. You know, the physical symptoms, as I've mentioned, you know, feeling tired, headaches, seem to be getting a lot more colds, or, you know, that kind of things we associate with being run down effectively. Then you get the emotional ones, you know, behavioral changes, you know, becoming more snappy, things like that, you know, to people who you're normally happy and friendly, suddenly start being abrupt with people, things like that. So, again, those slight changes that, you know, yeah, everybody has that kind of feeling, you know, I've got a headache today, you know, things like that. But putting more and more of the symptoms together, helping you recognize that, you know, some of those coming into you know, seeing them more often and more of those symptoms are some of the key signs to look out for. Definitely.
You know, I think we'd all recognize that burnout, stress, I find it interesting that differentiation between stress and burnout. Stress, sort of more of a short-term thing, and we all go through moments of stress. Trying to sell my house at the moment, boy, is that stressful. But that hopefully will pass, although it's been going on for months as it stands. But all of these different manifestations, you know, the physical symptoms, the emotional symptoms, the behavioural symptoms as well, I think we would all agree that they're unhealthy, impact on our ability to function. Yet, even if we would recognise those, there are some real complexities, barriers, sort of challenges in addressing them, aren't there? There's sort of some social things, some stigma things, as well as kind of not even knowing where to go type things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose as well, part of the role itself contributes to some of that. You know, as CISOs and security leaders, you know, you're always told a problem shared is a problem halved and everything else. But sometimes a lot of the work that CISO are doing is confidential, and, you know, and that's the reason why you're feeling like that. And you can't discuss with people because it is confidential. You know, you can't talk about the confidential stuff that's keeping you up at night in some cases. So trying to get that support externally is, you know, is difficult sometimes. And absolutely, you know, you're almost put under pressure to, you know, as a leader, everybody's looking up to you. So, you know, you can't show signs of weakness almost, you know. It's sort of, oh, look at that, you know, that boss is there. He's got his head in his hand and he's crying. What's up with the man? You know, he needs to, you know, how can we deal with the workload if the boss can't handle it? So there is a lot of social pressure and things like that. So, you know, I think there are organizations out there, you know, some really good charities. Mind is one of the ones that offer lots of free advice and how to do things, you know. So some of those key things, even some simple things, you know, an individual wellness plan, for example, just 5 straightforward, simple steps, quick and effective ones that you can put into place, can start to help. You know, you don't have to, you know, invest a lot of budget and things. Just doing simple things like doing something that you enjoy doing, you know, trying to get away from what's causing the problem. You know, I know it sounds easy to, just step away and walk away, and then it's still churning around in your head. But, you know, just start to focus on what's going on around you. You know, just take some time to try and get out into nature almost, and just put your phone down, just completely go off grid and look at nature and everything else. Nature's, it is a great place just to go and actually make you feel better by being outside in nature. It sort of isolates you from all those problems that you experience, and just, be in the now rather than worrying about, what's going on at work. Sometimes it's just some simple steps like that you can do, put some time aside to do things you enjoy and things like that.
Sometimes I think we need to be told, I feel that as much as anyone else, it's prioritization. There is any number of these matrices which are the urgent things versus the important things. And all too often it's the urgent things that are banging up my door that are the ones that I will go and do first because they're banging up my door. Whereas the important things aren't necessarily the things that are banging up my door, yet they really do need to be done for a kind of sustainable, whether it's professional work-life balance, mental health, all the rest of that. Some of those things that you've spoken about, it strikes me that obviously we're talking about executive burnout here as well, but you're managing a workforce where you are, Martin. So in terms of interventions that you can put in place as a leader, either directly in one-to-ones with your staff, or make sure there are frameworks there, what kind of things have you found to be most successful in remediating, but also kind of almost catching these things before they become an issue?
Yeah, so obviously education and awareness is a key thing, and as I say, those individual wellness plans, very straightforward, simple to implement, and effectively, rather than having to tell everybody what to do and how to help them, you almost help themselves. Make them feel empowered to look after their own health and well-being, and that's what we should all be doing, right? I appreciate there is an organisational responsibility for people, to look after people's well-being, but ultimately we're responsible for our own well-being, right? There's things we can do. So that individual wellness plan, as I mentioned, is a great way of doing it. Other things that we've put in organizations, and I've been at organizations that have implemented this, things like when people are in offices, create a wellness room or a quiet sort of contemplation zone. I've worked where Capital One were great, really good for looking after people's well-being. So they used to have on every floor of the office, a big sort of 4 or 5 story office, there was a wellness room to the side where it was nice and quiet, away from the busy hustle and bustle on that floor. You could go down and read mindful books. They had CD players in there. You could borrow CDs, things like that. So you could borrow them and listen to them. So they were doing lots of things there. Or they also have in each floor as well, they had a separate area near the windows where they had like green zones. So there was plants and and even there was even a tree in the middle of the building which had benches around, so you could go and sit in the middle of a well-lit office, so sit against a tree. So even if we were in the middle of a city where it was quite a distance to get into nature rather than the concrete jungle, but they had a big sort of tree in the office with benches, so sit around there, even get time away from the hustle and bustle of the office. So that's a bit drastic. Not every organization can put a tree in the middle of the building, but the simple things like Capital One as well, a great organization, used to have Lego, so little tables with Lego there. So you're having a stressful day, just go sit down 10 minutes. It's amazing how much focusing on building little bricks, no instructions, just bricks, just taking time out your busy day to put some little blocks together can just make you forget everything else that's going on. Just focus on what you're doing in the now. It's that all that chattering about I've got to do these projects, I've got to do that. You'll soon forget about that when you start putting little bricks together. It's amazing how much it focuses you on the then and now, and helps you almost forget about what else is going on. And obviously other organizations, things like pool tables or music rooms, anything to give your sort of colleagues space away from where they do, and other things as well. Things like if you don't have a big office, there's things you can do for giving people birthdays off and things like that, or religious holidays that you can take appropriate to your faith. Those also help mental health. They give that sense of the organization's looking out for me, looking after me. So you're encouraging employees to take those opportunities. Have your birthday off, don't come into work. That has a massive boost on people's well-being and sense of belonging. Diversity inclusive efforts as well, they also help promote a more welcoming and tolerant environment, because that can be sometimes a problem is, if you're seen as different, I say, with a CISO, you're expected just to manage and get on with things. Actually, looking at people's individuality and making awareness and putting things into place for people makes them feel like they belong, and again more willing then to go a little bit more for the company and things like that as well. It does make a massive impact on people's well-being.
Just coming back to something you said right at the beginning as you were describing the transformation that iPSL have been on, though, with regards to moving from on-premise more to being in the cloud. One of the outcomes of those transformations, and you said it yourself, is people being able to work remotely, people being able to work from home a lot more. That changes some of the dynamic we're talking about here, though, doesn't it? In terms of having an office workplace where you can maybe identify, just have a little tap on the shoulder and say, "Hey, Martin, you got time for a quick chat out in the courtyard, garden, whatever it is." This working from remote locations dynamic, I think, really does change this mental health and well-being conversation. Would you agree?
No, absolutely. And I think it's very important, even more so important than, when people are working from home, just have that check-in call, right? Let people know that it's okay not to be okay, even just, I always say to my team, because I don't see them, we very rarely get together, probably 3 times a year I get to actually see the team face to face, because people are all over the country. So it's difficult logistically to get together. So we make sure we have, a morning shout, even just 5-10 minutes. Everybody gets together, just say, what's everyone doing? Does anybody need any support? And then always make sure that you have that time just dedicated to that single person, because if there's a big group of you, they may not want to tell everybody what they've got. So make sure you have that, not just time for the team to all to get together, but to make sure that individually you're checking in on each other. And that goes for managers as well, right? Teams, it's not just a one-way thing. It's not managers saying to the team, "Are you okay? Can I do anything for you?" Again, sometimes it's good for the team to say, "Anything, boss? Are you feeling all right, boss? Is there anything we could do for you?" Absolutely encourage that. It's always, my virtual door is always open, as it was. So
yeah,
that's important for people to know that there is somebody there who they can chat to, right?
And also for managers, for yourselves, like you say, having your workforce coming up to you saying, "You're right, boss," it is one thing, but also there being a support network for executives, those at the top of the tree as well. My wife works in mental health as a psychoanalyst, but as part of her work, she also has to go through a program of supervision as well. So she has an opportunity to offload, to chat through the things. People are coming to her with their challenges, with their life problems, an awful lot, but she needs somewhere to take those as well. So it's important, I think, for execs also to have that support network around them.
No, absolutely, yeah. And like I say, all checking on each other, right? You've all got responsibilities, your colleagues, workmates as well. It's no different to with family. You always say, "How are you doing?" You meet your neighbour, "Oh, how are you doing today?" It's something we do as humans, right? Check up on each other, make sure everybody's okay. So why would it be any different at work, right? These are colleagues you work with, probably more. You work in 8 hours a day at least with these people. So why would you not want to check in on their health, right? It's a key part of your life. So absolutely.
Speaking of checking in, then I have to ask about your stress levels. You've obviously been on a journey in championing this, including enrolling on training programs as well. Was that inspired out of your own professional curiosity, or by you hoping to manage your own stress levels?
I think it's a combination of a few things, because obviously the role itself is stressful, as we've covered off. But I've got a couple of children, and one of them sort of during GCSE A-level times, lots of stress that they're put under. And I think there's a lot of stress put on children, particularly when it comes to exam times from schools. Parents will be supported, but it's schools who are just constantly applying pressure. You need to do well in this exam, otherwise you'll never succeed in life. And it's almost that negative connotation coming from school. So the oldest child I've got, she was having lots of problems with mental health and well-being, and came to the choice where I actually left one of my roles so I could be closer to home. It was a great role, but I wanted to be there for my family because it was starting to affect the oldest daughter. So got a role closer to home so I could look after her a bit better. And again, the role that we're in, stressful. Most of the time you're sitting down on desks, attending meetings. You're not, you're not up and talking by the water cooler. You're sitting down and it's like, I've got 2 minutes till my next meeting. Do I go and get a break, or do I just do this next email? So it's very important that definitely you need to look after yourself, for the reasons stated. So especially this time of year, it's beautiful now. The sun's up well early, sort of 5:30 in the morning. So try and get 45 minutes, an hour before work, because that, again, just getting those endorphins going, walking out into nature and looking at where I live. It's, I've got woods and things like that nearby, but even so, just walking that time in the morning, the birds are singing, and it's a beautiful time just to put you in that positive mind, that relaxed mind, before you then go, all right, let's start looking at the emails. I also try and block out chunks within my diary, put half an hour in the calendar first thing in the morning just to check up on emails. That way then, you can prioritize things. Try and block out your lunch hour. I think it's important and sacred that we should have a break between the day, so block out my calendar. And I've let everybody at work know, this time, between 12 and 1, that's when we've got lunch. It's almost a sacred time. Try not to book meetings in there if you can, and set that message across that it's okay to block out time on your calendar, right? If everybody does it, then it becomes the norm. So it's something I definitely encourage. But so yeah, it's part of the training. I was fortunate enough, a gentleman called Murray Pierce from Bright Cyber, he put a lot of, because he recognized the stress that CISOs and security leaders want. So he managed to sort of onboard, I think it was 12 of us on the cohort, introduced us to a positive intelligence training course, which looks at well-being, mental health, and provide sort of little activities that you can do. Even if you are busy, there's sort of the things called PQ reps, and it can just be sort of looking out your office window or looking out the window just to see, I've got trees and plants in my garden, watching bird feeders and stuff like that. So just looking at the birds for 5 minutes, totally just focusing on the here and now rather than work and everything that goes with it. And if you don't have the luxury of that, there's small things you can do, sort of if you're feeling stressed, it shows you what signs and symptoms to look for. And one of the tips is, if you start to become stressed or anxious, you rub your thumb and your first finger together and just focus on that action, feel your fingerprints and things, and you're totally focusing on that activity, that all that noise and chatter inside your head, that's trying to distract you and make you down, that doesn't get a chance to speak out, as it were. You're just purely focusing on that, rubbing those fingers together, what it feels like, that you feel your fingerprints, the grains on your fingers and things, to bring you into the here and now. And that makes such a big difference. Like I say, once you recognize those symptoms, early symptoms, you can start doing something, and then it just, problems seem to melt away. So absolutely recommended it. Really good course.
I've seen people rubbing their finger and forefinger together. I've never quite understood what it was. I know it was a kind of centering, comforting kind of thing, but I've never quite appreciated where that's come from.
Yeah, no, and like I say, it's so simple and straightforward. And then, the fact you've seen people doing it, I wonder if they've also been on the positive intelligence training course. Just say, calm down that noise in the background. As part of the training course, you have saboteurs, which are and judges. There's almost the negative aspects of your personality and things like that. And then you have sages, which different sage powers which you can act, enable and things like that. So that rather than letting the saboteur, who's normally the voice, as soon as you see something, the saboteur is almost that fight or flight mode, whereas the sage takes a little bit of time to kick in. So it's all about focusing to give the sage powers that time to quieten down the saboteurs, which are pretty much based on fight or flight, and within the role of what we do, it is constantly seems like a firefight a lot of the time. Yes. So it's sometimes focus on that one when the heat's coming, just relax and calm, focus on the now, and then again, right, let's look at the challenge now. I've had the chance to think about it rationally almost, and so yeah, it could well be people just allowing themselves to tune out all the noise, just to focus, get some some breathing space, and then go back at the problem with a different positive mindset.
Well, thank you very much indeed for sharing your insights, your strategies, your background as well today. Really, really interesting stuff, and I hope that it's been helpful for everybody listening, no matter where they are on their well-being, stress, burnout journey, giving them some things to think on and maybe some strategies and things for them to look on further. I can't let you go yet, though, because there are some quick fire questions, Martin, that we ask all of our guests here on CXO Secrets. And the first one is, well, the show's CXO Secret. So my question is, what's your secret? If you were to put your modesty to one side for a moment, tell us what key attribute you believe has enabled you to do what you do today.
Yeah, I think I've always been sort of had a dogged determination and resilience to get things done and to do the right thing, very much believe in doing the right thing. Don't just cover things up. Be open and honest and transparent. That's key. And I think if somebody says, no, you can't do that because of your background, your education, or whatever else it may be, then that just makes me even more determined, to go ahead and do it. So I think that dogged determination is one of the key attributes, I think, that helps me get to where I have today.
We do a Pass the Question on the show as well, where guests get to put a question to a future guest, whoever they may be. Our previous guest, John Van Uden, who's CTO at Nordic Bank Nordea, has this question to ask.
I often struggle with I would call the technical religious wars, or the tribes that get formed in organizations where, and we have a term for it here, which is being called to a meeting to act like dad, where you're called to a meeting, there's two groups, they have opposing views, they have opposing data points. And I have some tricks of the trade that I use to try and get through that. But your next guest, it would be lovely for them to share what are their tricks of the trade to deal with when we have tribes or conflict within two different teams that are acting like silos.
That's a good question. So thank you, John, for asking that. As with most sort of conflict resolution, I think you have to find something that both parties have got in common, no matter how small it is. As long as you can find something that they've got a common ground, it gives you something where you can start and build that trust and help you then move from there. So, and again, if we're all part of the same organization, I would say, so ultimately we're all on the same team. So we're trying to get what's best for the organization. So, I'd start with trying to find something in common and then building on that common ground to then help solve those issues and problems that seem to be present. And that's how I would do it. Just find whatever it is, that commonality between them both and work from there.
Yeah, find that common ground, look for the win-wins. This is a discussion we had a few episodes ago, actually, with Luis Suarez. We had a special very much on negotiation. So you're chiming in with very much the same advice that Luis has there as well. Finally, what question would you like me to put to a guest here on a future episode?
That's good. I think throughout my career, both in the military and outside of the military, I've had some, let's say, really poor managers, but then I've had some really good managers, and those really good managers tend to be the ones who have stuck out in my mind as being really good. And again, even the bad managers, I like to try and find something positive out of each of those experiences, and even if it's how not to do something right, it's at least see the positive, because you can then gain from it and think, if ever you see yourself doing that, you think, hang on, that's what that bad manager did, I don't want to follow that. So I would say to the next person, who don't have to name the person, but who's been the most influential manager, either positive or negative, and what traits or skills did they have that have the most positive impact on you? I suppose is a question. So who was the most influential manager? What traits or skills did they have that had the most positive impact on you and your career?
Great question. Martin, thanks again for sharing all of your insights today. And thank you for joining us here on CXO Secrets.
Thanks so much, David. Have a good day.